Okay, so the US government has banned all investments into BGI in America. Wow. What does this mean for genomics around the globe? And why is this happening now? This and more in today's episode of Bad Genome. You don't want to miss this. Welcome back to the channel, where we look at the impact of genomics on cancer and healthcare. As always, nothing we say should be taken as medical advice. For that, please consult a trained medical professional like your doctor. So, big news! Big news! On October 8th, 2022, the US Defense Department announced a ban on investments into BGI Genomics, which is a China-based DNA sequencing company. BGI, formerly known as Beijing Genomics Institute, is a huge competitor to Illumina, the number one sequencing provider in the world. And I covered this in my previous video comparing the two technologies, so check that out. And essentially, the government is saying you cannot use any BGI equipment in US hospitals or research labs. Possibly, I think this means you can't even work for BGI as an employee if you are a US citizen. Please tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think this could be the case. And it's worth saying that BGI isn't the only company being banned. There is a long list of just about every semiconductor company linked to China. It's now become a no-go area, at least in the US. Which brings us to the question, what does it mean? What does it mean for you if you're a scientist, a bioinformatician, a geneticist that's based in the US and also outside of the US? In the short term, probably not much. I think the semiconductor ban, now that's really serious for chip makers, for phone companies, for laptop producers with factories based in China. It's really serious. And there's a really good analysis video on the impact on these companies done by the guys at Viral. So do check it out. I'll put a link somewhere on top. But when it comes to DNA sequencing, most labs, they made that choice a long time ago. Within the US and even here in the UK, everyone's using Illumina. That's the truth. So not much difference in the short term, I think. Because you need to realize that it's not just about buying a box and sticking your DNA sample in. It's a whole ecosystem of chemical reagents to run your experiments, of computing platforms to run your analysis, to store your information. That's very peculiar to which option you go with. BGI has its own, Illumina has its own ecosystem. And people made that choice a long time ago before they even ran their first experiment. But this also means that labs which are currently using BGI, they were locked in a long time ago. And if they're outside the US, whether in Asia, in South America, some bits of Australia, I think. So these labs, if they're using BGI, they're not going to change just because of this ban in the US. So in short, in the short term, I don't think this is going to have much difference. If you found value in this analysis, please consider liking this video and maybe even subscribing to this channel. Now back to our content. But what about the long-term effects? How is this going to affect the science, its adoption into healthcare? Well, the question is linked to why is the US doing this ban right now? Why are they banning all these companies that are linked to China? And it's obvious that the US is thinking about its dominance in these areas of sequencing, but also in AI and chip manufacturing. And they're worried about the transfer of knowledge that's flowing out of the country, causing them to lose their market leader position in these areas of technology. Now, of course, these are security concerns. These companies are linked to the Chinese government, and this ban comes directly from the Defense Department. But the response, well, it's an economic response first and foremost. And that means it's going to cost them. Countries which are invested in BGI are going to have more incentive to stick with that platform. And don't forget that China itself is a huge market, which may now be closed to companies like Illumina because of this ban. It goes both ways. So I think, personally speaking, I think that the stakes are going to be higher for any lab, any hospital, research institute outside of US and China choosing which platform to go with because they're going to be locked in to to that decision. And therefore, there's going to be pressure on these companies from US and China to innovate, to distinguish themselves from one another, and also to lower costs. It's interesting that Illumina came out with this announcement just last month for the $200 genome, which is very, very low and very competitive. And this means that it's just a matter of time before BGI needs to match that price point. So what does it mean for us long term? I hope that it means more innovation from these two companies and maybe even from other competitors. I'm thinking of competitors like Oxford Nanopore, which is based in the UK. It's not as big as Illumina or BGI, but it's not based in China and US either. So it's a technology that's very, very different from the two. And I think that technology, that kind of startup environment is going to benefit in the long term. But what do you think? Is this move going to hurt BGI? Is it going to hurt Illumina and cost it its dominance in the long term? This has been my hot take on the US ban on BGI technologies. Thank you so much for watching. If you found value in this video, please consider liking it and maybe even subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.